from the grave, the same Jesus. We worship today, worship today. Came to us in grace and in truth, still with us, still on the move, the same Jesus. He's making us new, He's making us new. I know that my Redeemer lives. I know that my Redeemer lives. Still keeping all His promises. The same Jesus, the same Jesus. He's coming, the winds and the waves, His kingdom forever shall reign, and we know that He's coming again, He's coming again. I know that my Redeemer lives. I know that my Redeemer lives. He's still keeping all His promises. The same Jesus, the same Jesus. I know that my Redeemer lives. I know that my Redeemer lives. He's still keeping all His promises. The same Jesus, the same Jesus. Oh, He's the first and the last, the beginning and end. At the sound of His cry, all the world came alive. He has formed us from dust, put His breath in our lungs. We were made from His love, but we ran from the love. But He wouldn't give up on His daughters and sons. So He took up the cross and He laid down His life. And He did what He said when He rose from the dead. And He's coming back again. I know that my Redeemer lives. I know that my Redeemer He's still keeping all His promises. The same Jesus, the same Jesus. I know that my Redeemer lives. I know that my Redeemer lives. He's still keeping all His promises. The same Jesus, the same Jesus. The same Jesus, the same Jesus. I've tried so hard to see it. Took me so long to believe it. You choose someone like me to carry your victory. Perfection could never earn it. You give what we don't deserve it. You take the broken things, raise them to glory. You are my champion. Giants fall when you stand undefeated. Every battle you won. I am who you say I am. You crown me with confidence. I am seated in the heavenly place. Undefeated with the one who has conquered it all. Now I can finally see it, teaching me how to receive it. Let all the striving cease. Whoa, this is my victory. You are my champion. Giants fall when you stand undefeated. Every battle you won. I am who you say I am. You crown me with confidence. I'm seated in the heavenly place, undefeated with the one who has conquered it all. Oh, he's conquered it all. When I lift my voice and shout, every wall comes crashing down. I have the authority Jesus has given me. And when I open up my mouth, miracles start breaking out. I have the authority Jesus has given me. When I lift my voice and shout, every wall comes crashing
Sing it out.
Giants fall when you stand undefeated. Every battle you won.
I
am who you say I am. You crown me with confidence. I am seated in the heavenly place, undefeated. By the power of your name, I am seated in the heavenly place, undefeated, with the one who has conquered it all.
God of all existence, sovereign with no end, an architect of wonder, from dust you made a man, speaking life from nothing, the universe aglow, shining just to show me you love me. This I know, you love me. You love me. You love me. Oh, this I know, this I know. Your eyes as wild as fire, and hair as white as wool, a voice with strength like thunder. You reign in humble. Your crown for suffering, for death upon a cross. You gave your life to tell me you love me. You love me. You love me. This I know, this I know. You love me. You love me. Yes, you love me. Oh, this I know, this I know. I've never known a love so holy. I've never known a heart so kind. I just wanna bring you worship. I just wanna give my life, and I don't wanna miss one moment. No, I don't wanna turn away. I just wanna bring you reverence. I just wanna love you the same. I've never known a love so holy. I've never known a heart so kind. I just wanna bring you worship. I just wanna give my life, and I don't wanna miss one moment. No, I don't wanna turn away. I just wanna bring you reverence. I just wanna love you the same as you love me. You love me. You love me. Oh, this I know, this I know, that you love me. Oh, you love me. You love me. Oh, this I know, this I know, this I know. I know you do. I know I'm loved by my Father, my Maker, Creator. You love me. You love me. You love me. This I know, this I know. You love me. Yes, you do. You love
morning. How are you all doing today? Didn't sound very good. All right, well, my name is Bill Rendoni. I'm part of the BVCC Church Council, and I'm here to share with all you all that we have some important things we're going to celebrate here in the near future. Pastor Jeff and Jewel are going to be celebrating their 25th anniversary here at Bonita Valley.
It's awesome.
Give it up for them. Super, super important, and we are so blessed. So, as a body of believers, we're called to bless and honor those whom God has put above us in authority positions in leadership. And it says in the book of 1 Titus 5:17, the elders who direct the affairs of the church well are worthy of double honor, especially those whose work is preaching and teaching. And in Romans 12:10, it says, be devoted to one another in love. Honor one another above yourselves. So in doing this, we want to celebrate with them and bless them. So on March 6th, here in a few Sundays, both services, we're going to have some celebration there. We're going to be giving them a presentation, and there's things that all of you can be a part of. So first of all, just to my left and your right, there's a camera here at the end of every service starting today for the next few weeks. If you'd like to give a video message to Pastor Jeff and Jewel and to thank them or to share a story, whatever you'd like to say to them, that would be awesome. We're going to have a kind of an edited down version we're going to share on March 6th, but the fully unedited versions will go to Pastor Jeff and Jewel so that they can enjoy that. Secondly, if you'd like to write a handwritten thank you card, those are really, really amazing, especially in this day and age where everything's so instant and electronic. So if you want to take the time to handwrite a thank you card, maybe share a story or just something to bless them, you can put that in the offering at any service from now up until and through March 6th. And then lastly, we on March 6th, one of the things we'll do is we're going to take a love offering. And if you're not familiar with what that is, it just simply is taking an offering that will go to Pastor Jeff and Jewel just to bless them. We're called to bless them, to honor them. Their faithfulness has been amazing for the last 25 years, so we want to celebrate them on March 6th. So I will be back on March 6th, and Pastor Mike is going to be sharing a special message on that day as well. Awesome. So thank you.
How about a hand for Bill? Thank you, Bill.
If this is your first time at Bonita Valley, we invite you to sit back, relax, and enjoy the service. If you want some info on BVCC, simply complete our online Connect card. Here's how it works. Scan the QR code you'll find at the Info Center, Guest Central, or various other locations around campus with the camera on your smartphone. Open the link that will take you to Connect card. You'll find a number of connecting options, including first-time guests, prayer requests, I want some info on a Bonita Valley ministry. Check the appropriate connection box you're after. Push submit, and we'll get back to you ASAP. And if you are a first-time guest today, please stop by Guest Central at the end of this service and pick up a special gift bag we have just for you. We'd like to take a few minutes to tell you about some things coming up for you and your family at Bonita Valley.
Are you ready for some growing and connecting opportunities? At BVCC, we've got you covered. On Monday evenings, there's Dance Fit in the Life Center gym starting at 6 p.m.
On Tuesdays, starting at 7 p.m., we have life-changing support groups like Celebrate Recovery, Divorce Care, Grief Share, and our Confident Kids and Parent classes for strengthening families.
On Wednesday evenings at 7 p.m., there are tailor-made ministries for boys, girls, students in middle and high school, and a time of praise and prayer for adults in the worship center.
On Thursdays, our women's Bible study meet at 10 a.m. and then 6:30 p.m. both men and women gather for evening studies, with both groups launching a brand new series on February 17th.
On the first and third Fridays of each month, Collage, our ministry to young adults, happens in the Family Center starting at 7 p.m.
On Saturday mornings, it's Faith and Fitness Boot Camp for those wanting to get in shape physically, relationally, and spiritually.
Our next water baptism service happens next Sunday, February 20th at 1 p.m. in the Life Center gym.
On Sunday, March 6th, Pastor Jordan will be teaching our next 201 seminar, in which you will learn about 4 habits we all need to take our spiritual life to the next level.
And on Monday, March 7th, Financial Peace University classes begin for those who want to get in the best financial shape of their life. You'll find more information on these great growing and connecting opportunities online at bonitavalley.com or on our BVCC app, which you can download today for free. We believe God has entrusted us to be managers of our time, talent, and treasures. We believe He wants us to use temporary resources to make a real and eternal difference in our world. And that's what giving at BVCC is all about. When we give to God, we see lives changed and transformed, both others and ours.
There are 3 ways to give at BVCC. Online at bonitavalley.com/giving, by texting Bonita Valley to 833-303-9325, or by mailing your offering to BVCC 4744 Bonita Road, Bonita, California 91902.
During our Sunday services, we offer a professionally staffed nursery that will lovingly care for your little one up to 2 years of age. We also offer an outdoor patio area and a family room with TV monitors for parents who choose to keep children under 2 years of age with them. Pastor Davida and her team lead incredibly fun ministries for preschool and elementary-aged children in the Life Center gym. During today's service, you can take notes, sign up for events, and even give using your smartphone. Simply go to bonitavalley.com or your BVCC app and click on Follow the Service. Thanks for spending part of your weekend with us.
We've been in a series for the last several weekends simply titled Living Joyfully Ever After. It's not about after you die, it's about after you accept Jesus. Because real joy is not circumstance-based, it is Christ-based. It's not based on what's happening around me or to me, but what Jesus Christ is doing in me. And He gives us a joy that is our strength. Paul writes a letter, his most joyful letter, he writes to the Philippian believers. They had sent him, he's under house arrest in Rome, and they had sent him a care package. Several times they sent him care packages and offerings and support, and it just blessed him. And so he's basically writing them a thank you note. But as he's writing this thank you letter, he also teaches and encourages and challenges them, and he tells them many, many times to rejoice and that he's rejoicing. He's under house arrest, but yet he's full of joy, and he's teaching them and us how we can live full of joy as well. Because you are meant, joy is a strength for life, and you're meant to live joyfully ever after, and that's really what we're walking through week by week in this series. We got just a couple of more parts of this series. And I want to set up where we're going for this weekend, which is a couple of questions, and here's my first one. Raise your hand if people are one of your greatest joys. People just raise your, people are one of the greatest joys of your life, people. Okay, second question. Raise your hand if people are one of your greatest pains. Okay, like people are, like raise both hands and give up. Okay, so yeah, people can be one of our greatest sources of joy, and people can be one of our greatest sources of pain. And I'm talking about the person you married or gave birth to, or work with, or go to school with, or go to church with. Or you're going to watch the Super Bowl with later today because they got a bigger TV and better food. Or they're coming to your place because you got the big TV and the better food. The truth is, all of us have people in our lives that we kind of get sideways with. Now, some of them we can just ignore and we can just hide out from, but others we're related to, or we work with, or we worship with. And the question is, what do we do when people that are meant to be one of our greatest sources of joy become one of our greatest sources of irritation and pain? Well, the Apostle Paul answers that question. He deals with that very issue in Philippians chapter 4. I want to show you. Let's begin reading from the Message Bible, Philippians 4, verse 1. My dear, dear friends, I love you so much. I do want the very best for you. Watch this line. You make me feel such joy. People can be one of our greatest sources of joy. You fill me with such pride. Don't waver. Stay on track. Steady in God. I urge Euodia and Syntyche to iron out their differences and make up. God doesn't want his children holding grudges. Oh, yes. Sergius, since you're right there, help them work things out. Do your best with them. These women worked for the message hand in hand with Clement and me and with the other veterans. Worked as hard as any of us. Remember, their names are also in the book of life. Let me give you a little backstory to what Paul is writing here, because I find it so significant. He's writing this incredible letter about joy. And we've walked through joy doesn't mean you're not going to face challenging circumstances, difficult circumstances. He's walked through a number of them, and we've walked through them together. And now he talks about rejoicing. I'll say it again, rejoice in the Lord, not in your circumstance, but in the Lord. And then he turns to two women that were spiritual leaders. They were influencers in the church. And something had happened, and there was a divisive difference happening with them, and the implication was some pretty strong and hard feelings. And Paul writes to them, and he shares this, and interestingly again, these letters that when Paul sent them, it wasn't like on email, it wasn't texted, everybody didn't get their own copy. There was one letter read publicly. Now just kind of put yourself there for a moment, and this letter comes from Paul, and everyone's so excited, and then all of a sudden your name gets read. And your name gets read, and Paul says, I urge you, iron out your differences. I love you. You're part of what we're doing. You are working with us. And if you know the story of how Paul got started in Philippi, we talked about it in week 1, that actually when he and his team got to Philippi, there was not a synagogue. There were not enough Jewish people to have a synagogue. And so in those situations, many times the Jewish people would get together for prayer times. And Paul heard about a Jewish prayer time down by the river, so he goes there, and it's just women. Just these women and others. In fact, the church at Philippi really got started with women who had a hunger for God and a hunger for a prayer time. Paul shares Jesus with them. They accept Jesus as the leader of their life. Lydia, a very prominent woman, very wealthy, she accepts Jesus and invites Paul and his team to please come to her house and let her house kind of be their headquarters, and they finally agree to do that. So I say all of that to say that women were very instrumental in the beginning of the church at Philippi, in the continuing of the church at Philippi. Paul calls these two women, because those are both female names, he calls them our co-workers, our fellow workers. He talks about they're undoubtedly believers. He says their name is written in the book of life. They're a part of us. But somehow again, they'd gotten sideways with each other, and it was hurting them. It was hurting Paul. It always hurts our Heavenly Father, and it hurts others. See, once we kind of get sideways and have these divisive differences, people will tend to take sides. Whose side are you on? I'm on hers. I'm on hers. I'm on his. I'm on his. And well, you can't be his friend and my friend. Listen carefully. When we're united, there's almost nothing we cannot accomplish. And when we're divided, there's almost nothing we can accomplish that's going to last for eternity. Nothing significant happens when we're divided. That's why in actually the Lord's Prayer, sometimes we call the Lord's Prayer our Father in heaven. That's actually the disciples' prayer. The Lord's Prayer is in John 17 when Jesus prays. It was really the Lord's Prayer. And he says, Father, make them one. Make them one as we are one. Unite them as we are united. Because when we are united, there is a power that flows from unity that doesn't flow from disunity. So Paul challenges these two women who are undoubtedly Christian, undoubtedly godly women, but godly people can get sideways with godly people. And when that happens, bad things happen, painful things happen. So Paul writes to them, and he writes to all of us. And he stops this letter, and he shares this word. And what we're going to talk about for the next few moments is how do we iron out our differences? How do we iron them out and recover the joy of our relationships? Which is one of the ways that God fuels us. He fuels us with his joy, and he fuels us with the joy of others when we get rightly aligned with others. So listen, this message is for all of us. Some of you right now, you needed this message last week. Others of you go, hey, I'm good, I got no, you need this message in the future. Because wherever 2 or 3 are gathered together, there's friction because we rub against each other. When it says iron sharpens iron, what is that? That is friction. And so whenever you get a couple people together, you're going to have friction, and sometimes it's positive and sometimes it's heat. But we're going to talk about how do we handle it in such a way that people become, again, a source of our greatest joys and not our greatest pain. So if you have your phones, you can follow along. Or if you're watching online, you can print out the notes. Let's get started. Here's the first one. We iron out our relational differences by recognizing our confrontation styles. The word styles is what I want you to write and I want you to think about, because we have different styles when it comes to confronting. Let me define confronting again. We talked about it a couple weeks ago. To confront simply means face to face. It doesn't mean a fight, doesn't necessarily mean an argument. It just means there's a face-to-face discussion. That's confrontation. And we all have different ways that we do that. Psychologists and counselors share like 5 basic confrontation styles, and I want to walk you through these for just a moment. And as we do, I want you to think which one is mine and which one's the person that I'm kind of sideways with. So let's get started. Here's the first. Confrontation style, number 1, is winning. There are some people whose style is just win, baby. It's whatever it takes. I'm going to win this thing. I'm going to win this argument. I'm going to win this debate. I'm going to win this discussion. I'm going to win this issue. Now, at that point, it's not even about what it's about winning. And if I have to get historical, I will. Now, historical means you pull up their rap sheet. Now, what is a rap sheet? Okay, again, for those of you who are unfamiliar, others of you know very much. Rap means record of arrest and prosecutions. It's a record of arrests and persecutions, in which we just show you every time you've ever done this before. This is not your first offense. So we're not just talking about this time, we bring in everything. We throw in the kitchen sink, everything that's ever happened. It just all comes out. And that's kind of the winning strategy. If that doesn't work, sometimes winners will go from historical to hysterical. They'll raise the volume level. They'll raise their anger level. Let me tell you something about anger. We've talked about anger on multiple occasions, but anger, for some people, it's a cover-up, but it's also a tool. People that get angry have learned that others are intimidated by anger. People often intimidate others with anger. They just blow up, and they know that people will back off when they blow up. And so some people will raise their anger level because people just are intimidated by angry people. So this is winning personality style, confrontation style. Let me tell you what often is kind of at the heart of it is control. Who's in control of this relationship? Who's in control of this situation? Now that's kind of the negative side of it. Let me say that every style we'll talk about has strengths and weaknesses. That's kind of a weakness of the winning confrontation style. The strength of it is people that have a winning confrontation style, they want to deal with things. They want to get to them. They don't want to just let it go. They realize that, and Paul was saying, you got to deal with this. This is not going to just go away on its own. How many know that time doesn't heal everything? Are you with me? Okay, if time healed everything, you don't need to go to the doctor. Just sit around for a while. But it doesn't. Sometimes time makes it get worse if you don't treat it. Are you here? And so there are issues in our life that if we don't treat them, they don't get better. They get worse. So the winning style has positives and it has negatives. Here's the second. Confrontation style, number 2, withdrawing. Withdrawing. There's a pastor, his name is Doug Ferguson, and he really helps us see what this style is because it was his style. Here's what he writes. When my wife Kim and I were first married, we realized that in our marriage we were going to have conflict. That wasn't surprising. What was surprising was how very different we approached conflict. I grew up as a conflict avoider. I grew up in the heart of the South, where some people still refer to the Civil War as that recent unpleasantness between the states. I can ignore almost anything. I simply withdraw and don't talk about it much, like a turtle. When turtles encounter conflict, they hide in their shells. I'm very good at being a turtle. My wife, Kim, on the other hand, grew up in a family that loved to face conflict out in the open. I used to wonder if it was recreational for them. In animal analogies, she grew up in a family of gorillas. Gorillas like to mix it up. They get things into the open where they can deal with them. So you can just imagine what happened the first time a turtle and a gorilla encounter conflict. I don't remember what the first fight was all about, but I'll never forget my response. I was the perfect turtle. I walked out, went to bed. Right there, in the middle of our discussion, I walked out of the room, walked into the bedroom, turned off the lights, crawled into bed, leaving Kim just standing in the kitchen alone. Gorillas can't stand that sort of behavior. So Kim comes into the bedroom, flips on the light, and announces, "We're not finished." Now, turtles know exactly how to respond to that sort of threat. I rolled over and buried my head under the pillow, which for a gorilla is just another invitation for action. Kim walked over, pulled the pillow off of me, and started beating me with it. Obviously, we had a lot to learn. And thankfully, over 20 years of marriage, we've gotten better. I am much less turtle-like, and I have learned to never refer to my wife as a gorilla. We've learned to respect each other's styles and how to work things out. Now, I find it amazing. God just has an incredible sense of humor. It's amazing how many times God just connects a gorilla and a turtle. And one person says, come out wherever you are, let's fight like a gorilla. And the turtle says, I'm a turtle. And so it's important to understand that there's different styles. And when it comes to withdrawing, and people that withdraw, and there's a lot of reasons, I think, why they withdraw, and there's fears and concerns and misunderstandings. There's a lot of things about it. And in fact, for some people, a confrontation is just totally negative. Maybe think of it in the terms, one writer calls it care-fronting instead of confronting. I care enough to deal with this. Because what happens with people that withdraw is there may be a ceasefire, there may be what seems like peace, but it's not really peace, it's just the absence of firing, because real peace is not just the absence of a problem, it's the presence of divine order in the face of problems and difficulties and adjustments. So withdrawing for some people feels safe, but listen to me, if you're a turtle and you withdraw, the relationship will never be healthy and it will never grow. Because without dealing with the issue, and because issues don't just go away, they go underground. They come out in other ways in our lives and relationships. Here's the third. Confrontation style number 3, yielding. Yielding is a style in which a person expresses their thoughts or opinion, but only so far. They'll start it, but then they back off. They give way, they yield, and sometimes because they're afraid of the other person's reaction. If I push this too far, they're going to blow up. This is going to be, explosions aren't good for anyone. Or if I push this too far, they may leave me or abandon me or not like me or drop me, and so they'll express their opinion, but then they back away. Now, let me talk to those of you who are yield-styled people when it comes to confrontation. People that yield may achieve an outward peace, but they seldom achieve an inward peace. In other words, they're protecting the outward, but they're not experiencing inward order. Let me tell you something else about people that yield. Is that often when you yield and you yield and you yield, they're often depressed people. And let me explain why. Depression is pushing down our emotions. And when I push down my emotion, and here's again what counselors and behaviorists tell us, you can't selectively depress an emotion. When you suppress emotions, you suppress all of them. You don't feel anything as intensely. In fact, after a while, you stop feeling anything at all. Because we start stuffing and bearing and stuffing and bearing because we're not dealing with it, we're stuffing it. And the more we stuff it, sometimes the people that yield can be among the angriest, but it's turned inward. They don't look angry because they don't express it, but they feel it. Confrontation style number 4, compromising. I don't get everything I want, you don't get everything you want, nobody totally wins, nobody totally loses, and nobody's totally happy. Now, there are times I'm not against compromising at all, and there are settings and situations and issues which compromising is a really good plan. But not when it comes to significant issues. Now you say, what's that? Something that is core, significant to one person or the other. If it really matters to one person or the other, just to compromise, it doesn't do it for either one or the relationship. And one more, confrontation style number 5, resolving. Resolving is about working toward a solution that both people buy into, that both people are a part of. It's not manipulation. It's not mandated. Both people come to an agreement that, yeah, this is the best course for us to take. This is the best action. This is the best response. This is the best way for us to deal with this issue in our relationship. Now, honestly, and I don't have time to spend more with these styles, every style has its strength and its weakness. Again, when type of personalities they get to things. Yield, all of these styles have times in which they work and times in which they're not the best. So my question simply is, which one are you? Most of the time. Is the one you recognize about yourself, how you tend to handle confrontations in your life? And what style is the person that you're kind of sideways with? Have you ever thought about their style? How do they deal with confrontation? Now, let me just add one more side note real quickly. When it comes to our confrontation styles, sometimes different styles work better at different times. I'll give you one example from my life, from my marriage. Now, this one is safe. I'm going to choose a safe example because my wife is in this service. Now, she wasn't in the last one, so we didn't record it, but she's in this one. So let me adjust my story a little bit. Let me talk about an issue in our marriage, decorating our home. That's like my wife's thing. Like she does art, she's great, her eye, she sees colors I don't see. Like when something's white, it's white. No, it's got pink tones, it's got gray tones. When she does painting in our house, there's like there's a whole bunch, it looks like a rainbow until we figure out how it looks and lighting, and that's kind of her thing. Now, when it comes to decorating our home, she'll ask me for my opinion. I don't really think she wants it. She swears she does. It's the only time she swears. She swears she does that she wants my opinion. I don't really think so, because when I give it, we don't do it. But I think she asks. She asks for my opinion. She really does. And I'll say, I don't. This always cracks me up. Okay, let me just. Women will ask their husbands, or girls will ask their boyfriends. Have you seen them do this thing like their shoes? Like this one, or this one? Or this one? Or this? Now, why ask us? Like, you don't like the way we dress. Why would you ask us to help you dress, right? Are you with me? Like, why are you wearing that? Well, why are you asking me for advice? Okay, so anyway, I digress. That's my marriage thing. So anyway, she'll ask me and I'll give my opinion, but then I yield. Now, this one doesn't need to go all the way to resolution because I really don't care. I really don't. Like, I'll give my opinion, and here's what I found. Like, if it's not what she wants, she's never going to be happy, and if it's not what I want, I don't really care. So I will yield. Now, she does what she does best, does a great job. Decorate offices in our house. I do what I do best. I carry it in the house. I put the legs on things. That's my job. So there are different times, different issues for which different confrontation styles work best. But if it's significant, if it's foundational to that relationship, resolving is the only and best way to go at it, because it's the way that's the healthiest and brings the most growth to the relationship. So it's so important to understand, if you're going to iron out your differences, we need to iron out how we face conflicts in different ways, how we confront in different ways. We need to understand ours, its strengths and weaknesses, and the other person's, its strengths and weaknesses, and we need to game plan for confrontation styles, which is really the second key. A second key that's so important, again, is we need to iron out our relational differences by implementing a restoring strategy. We need a strategy. Like, once I understand, that's good. Now what do I do? Paul says to these two women, Euodia and Syntyche, he says, iron out your differences. Now, again, he doesn't say who was right or wrong. Chances are it wasn't one person. Paul had a kind of a sideways time with Barnabas, one of his ministry partners, and they ended up going separate ways, but they didn't separate from each other, and they both continued to minister, and then later on they kind of reconnected. So I don't think Paul's trying to say one person's right, one person's wrong. He doesn't jump into that. He just says, work it out. And I want to walk you through, how do I work it out? And there's a strategy. I ran across this years ago. I ran across a strategy, a 5-fold strategy for how to work out going sideways with someone. And it's an acrostic based on the word peace. Peace is order. Order with God, order with ourselves, order with others. And by using the 5 letters in the word peace, it gives us a strategy for peace. I want to walk you through it on the screens. Here's the first one. The letter P, plan a peace conference. That's what Paul was telling Erodia and Syntyche to do. Get together, he says, plan a conference. And to do that, one of you's got to be a first stepper. Somebody's got to initiate a peace plan, a peace conference. Jesus did for us. When you and I were separated and distanced from God, Jesus was the first stepper to create peace for us with God and ourselves and others. And he challenges us to do the same. Watch, Matthew 5, verse 23. So if you are offering your gift at the altar, Jesus says, and remember there that another believer has something against you. Interesting phrase. Not that you're ticked with somebody else, but somebody's a bit ticked with you, and you know about it. Leave your gift at the altar. First, what? Go. One more time. First what? Go. What is go? It's an action. First, feel. No, don't feel. First, think. No, don't think. You already know something's not right. Go. Be a first stepper. Make peace with that person, then come back and offer your gift. To make peace, we need a peace conference. We need to go. Now, let me talk about this going for a moment, because the best time to make a peace conference is at the best time. You go, duh. No, because not every moment's the right moment. The moment that something first happens, sometimes it's not the right moment. The moment you first walk in the house after a day's work is not the best moment. Just before you go to bed, it may not be the best moment. Just when you wake up, there are right moments for right discussions. And a right discussion at a wrong time won't work out right. Timing is everything. This is so powerfully illustrated by one of my favorite writers, Gordon MacDonald. He interviews an older couple. They were believers for Dr. Reese, Paul Reese, Edith Reese. Paul was the editor for Christianity Today, great writer, speaker, and his wife. They've been married for over 60 years. Gordon interviews them about conflicts. And here's what he describes. He asked them, after 60 years of marriage, do they still have disagreements? Oh, sure we do, Dr. Reese responded. Yesterday morning was a case in point. Edith and I were in our car. She was driving. She failed to stop at a stop sign. It scared me half to death. So what did you do, Gordon asked. Well, I've loved Edith for all these years, and I've learned how to say hard things to her. But I must be careful, because Edith, when she was a little girl, her father always spoke to her harshly. And today, when she hears a manly voice speak in anger, even my voice, she is deeply, deeply hurt. But Paul MacDonald said, Edith is 90 years old. Are you telling me that she still remembers a harsh voice that many years ago? Reese said she remembers that voice more now than ever. And Gordon asked, so how did you handle that driving situation from the other day? He said, I simply said, Edith, darling, after we've had our nap this afternoon, I want to discuss a thought I have for you. And when the nap was over, I did. I was calm, she was ready to listen, and we solved our little problem. How many of you thank God for naps? It's like it's biblical, like take a nap before you talk. It's like Jesus took naps. Naps are a God thing. So here's what I want you, here's what I want you to get in your heart and mind. I'll put it on the screens. Confrontation plus love equals growth. Confronting with love, in love, speaking the truth in love, not just speaking the truth, equals growth. Now listen, by the time Jewel and I are in our 90s, I hope I'm as wise and considerate as Dr. Reese. And I hope that one of us can still drive safely. That's like my twofold prayer. Like that I'll be that considerate and one of us can drive without killing us. Letter E. Empathize with the other person's experience and feelings. To empathize means we do our best to enter into another's experience. Paul helps, watch, Paul, it's amazing. He writes this. 1 Corinthians 9, verse 22. I entered their world and tried to experience things from their point of view. That's empathizing. I become just about every sort of servant there is in my attempts to lead those I meet into a God-saved life. Paul was an amazing empathizer. Scripture tells us that Jesus experienced everything we've experienced. Not because he didn't know it, but so we can know that he empathizes with us, that he's been there, done that, experienced that. Now, this is so interesting because many times when you and I get in discussions, arguments, disagreements, we get sideways, we're all about making our point. We're all about how we feel, but we seldom are about how the other person feels and how they're processing it. And in fact, I read a really interesting kind of empathy study. It was done by a medical school, and they're teaching students to be doctors, and they're training them. And one of the things they do with these young medical students, and this one doctor came up with what she called an age suit. Actually, it was an old person suit. And so she comes up with this suit that consists of ear protectors that kind of stifle hearing. There's a yellow visor that blurs your eyesight and makes it hard to distinguish colors. Knee and elbow pads so joints can't move very easy, stiffens joints. A Kevlar jacket, kind of a heavy vest that presses against the chest. You can't kind of breathe as fully. Padded gloves. The suit weighed about 22 pounds. And this doctor would put these on the medical student and say, "Welcome to old age." And then she says, Dr. Eckhart, "My aim is to turn young, energetic people into slow, creaking beings, temporarily at least, helping them develop a feeling for what it's like to be old. Our hope is that empathy, don't miss it, empathy with the elderly will fuel their interest in working with older people as patients, or at least better understand them when they are their patients." You better treat someone when you empathize with them. When still tell them to get with the program, when you understand what program they're living in. One of my favorite examples of this, and so aging is one of them. There was a pastor, because I read a lot of pastor journals and pastor deals, and this pastor was sharing about how he would speak, and in his church when he preached, he had a guy that was just like, his body language was so negative. Now, most of you don't know, but those of us who speak, we see a lot more than you know we see. I mean, we see when you look at your watch. We see when you shake your watch. Like, we see when you look at your phone. We see a lot of stuff. And so this guy was sitting just right in the pastor's line of sight and would just cross his arms, and just shake his head no. Like, it's hard to speak with everything. You make a point, no. And it was like this guy was just, his mouth would dry up. After he went back in with praise, he said, "God, I can't keep preaching with this guy like that. I mean, you either got to get rid of him or you got to move me." But this, and he said, in my mind, I pictured him as like this devouring lion. He just wanted to destroy me. That's all he wanted to do. He wanted to destroy me, intimidate me, and he would cross his arms and shake his head, and he began to pray about this man, pray for God to move this man. He said, "I'm not going to say it was a vision, but God gave me a whole different thought, a whole different perspective." He said, literally, God helped me reframe how I saw that man. And instead, God said, he's not a devouring lion. He's a wounded lamb. Please understand, and I read this statement years ago, that every obnoxious act is a cry for help. See, most people that do really stupid stuff, they're not doing it just because they're doing it because they're hurting. What's really important to understand is the people that are the biggest pains in our life are sometimes experience the biggest pains in their life. And we don't see it that way because we don't empathize with, like with Edith Reese, how her dad yelled, and 60 years later, it was still fresh. It's amazing how many things trigger things, have nothing to do with this argument, with this confrontation, but with one that we grew up in. And it's like a reaction we have. And so God gave him a different picture of this man, and he said, literally, I reframed him. Then the next week when he came out to speak, the guy was the same spot, did the same thing, had his arms crossed, shook his head, but it didn't bother him. Because he said, now I saw that man as wounded, not as vicious. Did the man change? Eventually, yeah, he did change, but the whole point was, sometimes people around us aren't yet ready to change, but you know how we can change toward them? When we reframe them. Instead of seeing them as a pain, We ask ourselves, I wonder what pain's causing that. Because healthy people just don't go around causing pain. Pained people cause pain. It's amazing how many times people that are abused abuse other people. The wounds in our life come back and are reflected in our actions, and they're often just a symptom of a wound in our life. So empathizing is incredibly important. Here's letter A. Attack the problem, not the person. A great example of this and what not to do, there's a country song called Mama, Get a Hammer, There's a Fly on Daddy's Head. Not a good plan. Like, you can kill a fly with a hammer, but it's pretty hard on the person that you swing the hammer at. So it's like, look, hammers are great for nails. They're not great as fly swatters. Scripture encourages us to attack root causes, not the person. Watch, James says, James 4, verse 1, what causes fights and quarrels among you? Let's go deeper, he says. Don't they come from your desires that battle where? Within you. You desire, but you do not have. You covet, but you cannot get what you want, so you quarrel and fight. You do not have because you do not ask God. In other words, James says every external fight you see started on someone's insides. Every outside battle started with an inside battle. A battle of wants, a battle of wills, a battle of desires, a battle of cravings. You want something and you can't get it, and so you battle, but you don't realize that person isn't your source. God is your source. You ask people to do for you what only God can do for you, and then you get mad at them. They're not the answer. God is the answer, and they're not the problem. It's inside of us, and so he says, go inside. What's my desire? What do I crave? What am I trying to get out of this? What's going on in their life? So it challenges us to attack the real issue and not attack the person. Because it's so easy to see the person as the issue, and they're not. Letter C. Cooperate wherever and however you can. Cooperate. Matthew 5, verse 9, Jesus says, you're blessed. That word again means joyful. When you can show people how to, say it out loud, cooperate instead of compete or fight. Let me give you a synonym for cooperate. Flexible. Be flexible. Peacemaking people are flexible. Here's an incredibly powerful insight from a Christian counselor. He writes, more relationships die from inflexibility than from adultery or abuse or alcohol or anything else. Let me say that again. More relationships die from inflexibility than from adultery, abuse, alcohol, or anything else. When one or both parties are unwilling to change, unwilling to move, to budge, to compromise, the relationship is in serious danger. Misunderstandings and mistakes can be corrected where there's a willingness to do so. Be careful about the hardening of the attitudes. Not the arteries, the attitudes. That we get an attitude that hardens. Now listen, I'm not saying that there are times we are never to compromise our core values and beliefs, but we're always to be flexible with our methods. There's a difference between core principles and temporary methods. Our methods have to change. How we do things if you want to die, live by, we've never done it that way before. That's what the dinosaur said. So you got to understand, you can't keep doing the same thing the same way and get different results or better results or growing results. We've got to be flexible in our methods and stand firm with our principles. But some people, it's all about the method. You didn't do it right. Well, no, hold it. Did I do right or I just didn't? The method wasn't right. And so many of us get locked into methods because it's not being. So I challenge you in your marriage, in your family, at work. If we don't flex, we're going to die. The relationship is going to die. Hold on to your core values, but be flexible with how you express, how you live it out, what your methods are. And then the last letter, E, emphasize reconciling over resolving. We talked about the importance of resolving, but that's not the most important. Paul writes, 2 Corinthians 5, verse 20. We are Christ's representatives. God is using us to speak to you. Receive the love he offers. Be, say it out loud, reconciled to God. Now, what does that mean? To be reconciled is to be brought back together. Be reconciled to God. The key to being reconciled to anyone else is first be reconciled to God. If I'm reconciled to God, he helps me reconcile with others. So I got to get right up before I can get right out. Many of our battles is because I'm not right this way and I can't be right this way. So I start out, I got to be loved to love. I got to receive love to love. I need God's equipping in my life to be equipped for life. So it starts up and then it goes out. But then let's go a little deeper for just a moment. It is so important to understand that reconciling prioritizes the relationship over agreeing on everything. There are some things we are never going to agree about because we're different. We're so different in our values, in our experiences, in our genders, in our walk. There's so many things. We're so different in so many ways. So the idea that we're always going to agree on everything, listen carefully, listen. We may not always see or ever see eye to eye on everything, but we can walk side by side through everything. Well, that was good. Okay, let me try that again. We may not, and sometimes we will not, see eye to eye on everything, but we can walk side by side through everything. We really can. If my priority is the relationship and not just my side, your side, my priority is not restoration, it's reconciliation. And often once I make reconciling, walking side by side, it's amazing how many things we can work out as we walk together that will never work out if we don't. Rick Warren puts it like this, listen. He writes, it's always more rewarding to resolve the conflict than to dissolve the relationship. It's not easier, but it's more rewarding. There are people in your life you want to wash your hands of, walk away from, say, forget it. You can do that. But you don't get any rewards in heaven for that. You don't get any joy on earth for that. You don't get any character growth and development for that. It's always more rewarding to resolve a conflict than to dissolve a relationship. In fact, I want to put that line on the screens. Okay, here's that line. I want you to read it out loud with me. Now that means with your voice, okay, not just with your eyes. I want you to say it, because something about, at least I'm a visual learner. When I see it and say it and write it, which is one of the reasons I encourage writing notes and think down, because it makes it visual. So I want you to read this with me. It's always more rewarding to resolve a conflict than to dissolve a relationship. Always. You might get somewhere faster by yourself, but you won't accomplish as much by yourself. The things, no one of us, Paul says, can say to another one, I don't need you, because we do. Paul says we're like a body, and how does a body function if it's missing parts? It can function, but not as well, not as fully, not as completely. We can function without people in our lives, but not as we were meant to live. We'll never accomplish everything that God created and called us to by ourselves. It's all about relationships. God's relationship, Father, Son, Spirit, God's relationship with us, our relationship with others. So I say all of that one more time to say to you that people can be a source of our greatest joys. And people can be a source of our greatest pains. And what do you do with someone who's one of your greatest pains and you married them, or gave birth to them, or work with them, or go to church with them, or you're going to the Super Bowl party with them? I'm so thankful that Paul, in the middle of this incredible letter, he just speaks right out to two women. But he wasn't just talking to them. He was talking to those two women, Euodia and Syntyche. He's talking to men. He's talking to parents. He's talking to students. And he said, I want to talk to you about how important it is for you to iron out your differences. Because what we can do together, we can never do separated. So how do we do that? Well, one of the ways we iron out our differences is we need to recognize that we have different confrontation styles. And so I encourage you once again to be very aware of your style. We'll put them on the screen. There's winning, withdrawing, yielding, compromising, resolving. I ask you one more time, what's your kind of go-to style? When you get in a confrontation with someone, kind of, which style is your primary, fits you? Every style has strengths, every style has weaknesses. What's their style? Again, if their style is so different than yours, sometimes even if they're the same, we need to appreciate and understand how we approach things from different directions. Which leads us to a second. If we're going to iron out our differences, we also need to implement strategies. Restoring strategies. P is for plan a peace conference. Somebody's got to be a first stepper. Now, let me get real with you. It may be a call today. Maybe a text, maybe an email. Maybe can we just get together? I want to talk with you. I want to share something with you. So we start. Somebody's got to start. And Jesus says, if you're bringing God, God's concerned about your relationship. So you can't be the best this way if you're not the best this way. So just leave it and go. Initiate. E is for empathize. Take a moment and understand the people that are a pain in your life are most often people in pain. We often don't see that. We see the behavior, but we don't see the pain. We don't see the issue. And so that's why James says, listen first. Be quick to listen, slow to speak, and slow to heat up. Because sometimes we heat up and we don't even know what we're heating up about. So just listen with your eyes and your heart. Just ask questions. Empathize. Try your best. I can't ever crawl into somebody's situation completely, but I can start learning. I can start helping what's going on in this person's life. A is attack the problem, not the person. The person is not the problem, the issues, and separate those two. Don't use a hammer on a person or a fly. It's not the right instrument. Go inside and what's taking place in my heart, what desire, what frustration is in me, in them, because James says outward battles start on the inside. So go there, attack what's on the inside. Cooperate whenever and however you can. Be flexible. My way or the highway doesn't work. What's our way? What's the best way? What's a new way? And then finally, emphasize reconciling over resolving. We may not see eye to eye on everything, but we can walk side by side through everything. And that's how you and I recover the joy, lost or forfeited joy from difficult relationships. Would you bow your heads, close your eyes just for a moment? Father, help us. Once again, I thank you for Paul's letter, and I thank you that he raises issues and subjects that are the real ones we deal with every day. That joy is not the absence of difficulties, it's the divine order that you bring to every difficulty in our life. And with head bowed, eyes closed just for a moment, I only ask you to do that. It's not a spiritual thing, it's just shutting out distractions. And all of you who are online, from wherever you may be, whatever time you may be watching, I believe God sets up divine appointments. I really do. And here's my challenge to you. Before you and I can be right with others or ourselves, we've got to be right with God. That's not about going to church or doing something. That's about accepting someone and what he's already done for us. So right where you sit or online, you can pray this prayer with me that says, Jesus, forgive me of my sins. That's trying to be the boss of my own life. I thank you that when you suffered and died on the cross, you were paying for all of my mistakes and failures and willfulness. And when you rose again, it's the promise that your payment was enough. Change my heart, change my mind, change my life. And I ask it in Jesus' name. And his word says to as many as receive him, he gives them power to become the sons and daughters of God. Amen.